Can you see it?
Got it.
Cool.
Yep. Hello and welcome to the Cash Furnace. My name is Paul Kinzerski, and together with my co-host Eric Downs, we aim to become your go-to source for daily stock and crypto market news. Today's date is February 4th, 2021. In today's podcast, we're going to cover Pinterest earnings report, SPH earnings report, CTHR earnings report, and also in the crypto space, we're going to cover Ethereum fees reaching all-time highs. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you see and want the news to keep coming, make sure to do the big three: like, subscribe, comment, share if you want to. Help us run up this YouTube algorithm. Let's make some money. All right, Eric, let's
The
start
big
off with
three.
Pinterest.
I like that. The big three.
Mm.
Wow. Pinterest. Holy cow. Um. Okay, so Pinterest reported earnings today, and they had a blowout for 2020, obviously ending the year.
Yep.
Their quarterly year-over-year revenue growth, they beat both earnings per share and revenue. Their revenue growth year over year was 76% from Q4 2019. 76%. That's huge, dude.
I feel like we keep saying this with the earnings report for the big companies, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's at
People spent
706
money
million.
in December, man. November,
What's that?
December. People spent money, a lot of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Well, and their big thing, the probably the most outstanding part about all this is they had 100 million new monthly active users in 2020. That brings their total to 450 million. So unbelievable, right? They grew their user base by 30% in a year.
It's 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 absurd.
It's absolutely insane. And so, we were talking about this in the thread today, and just talking about, like, okay, so we all know what Pinterest is, right? It's basically it's like a digital cork board, right? You can
Right.
idea board, right? You put all
Hmm.
your little pictures and stuff from the internet up there.
It's
How
genius, is
is
what it is.
Yeah. Well, and I always kind of I don't want to say I wrote it off, but I never really think about Pinterest. I'm not a Pinterest user. I
Yep.
don't browse boards for inspiration, and I know a lot of people do. I know they're very useful, but I don't use them, so they're just not on my radar. But man, only taking just a moment to think about what that business is and the lane that they've carved out for themselves, it's actually not surprising that they are doing this well.
Well,
Um,
it is to me right now. I guess not the new users, but the earnings is surprising to me.
the
I
earnings, is,
guess
yeah,
I guess when you look at it, right, data is king, as we always say on this platform. And where better can you find out what people are looking to buy or purchase next than on Pinterest? That's pretty much essentially what it is used for, right? It's not really an entertainment platform. It's more like ideas, inspiration for things you're going to do, improvements you're going to make on your house, tattoo ideas, stuff like that, right?
right. It's kind of
So
genius.
yeah. So that data is extremely valuable. However, what we were also talking about in the thread, I think, is even smarter. And that's the fact that they're planning on getting actual companies onto their platform and basically utilizing both advertising and getting a commission structure for the sales that flow from their site.
Yeah,
So
they're
they're going
they're
to
double
be
dipping.
double dipping in everything,
Yep.
in all the sales. So basically, just to explain to our viewers, if you have a store on Pinterest now, essentially, you will pay to advertise on Pinterest. But also, if someone clicks on that link and goes to your store and makes a sale, Pinterest will also get a cut of that sale as well, which is just so smart, man.
It's so juicy, dude. It's so juicy.
But
And
what I
like,
don't what I don't get is why hasn't this been utilized by other platforms? Why doesn't Facebook do this if you have a Facebook store? Or I don't know. Anything else?
I don't know that I could speculate on that. I mean, I think that's a great question. I'm not really sure, but for our users who who don't use Pinterest, right? And that includes me, right? We a bunch of us in our thread, we played the Pinterest earnings, um, and they went really well, right?
Mm.
I didn't even check what it was up at the time of this podcast, but I remember looking just briefly, you know, the stock's up 10% after hours. They absolutely smashed, and it got our juices flowing and talking about Pinterest. And I hopped on the website. I haven't been on Pinterest in, I don't know the last time I was on Pinterest. And it's exactly what I remember it as, right?
Right.
It's just a bunch of boards. It's a bunch of boards interlaced with a bunch of ads,
Hmm.
and it's very cleverly laid out. And it struck me at that moment. I was like, man, you know what? Pinterest doesn't have any competition. If there's any sort of like mood board, collaboration, inspiration, promotion platform,
Yeah.
like no one else has this really. You might be able to say in Instagram, you could put photos of your cool stuff on Instagram, but it doesn't function in the same way remotely. It's hardly comparable. I never realized how thin a lane they've carved out and walled out and put a moat around for
Right.
themselves.
Right.
And they have a massive user base now. We've talked about it before on the podcast. Like, we all know what a massive user base means. It means you got eyeballs for ads. It means you got data to sell. And this data, like you said, Paulie, is some of the most valuable data because it's an advertiser's dream.
Right.
Because, like on Facebook, Instagram, advertisers can get a profile of users based off of their interests, based off the pages they follow and the kind of stuff they post. That's cool, but that doesn't tell you what they want to buy.
Right.
Everything on Pinterest, if you really think about it, people put together boards, whether that's like, you know, boards for like renovating your house or clothing or jewelry and stuff like that. All of these things are consumer goods in some form or another. And these
Right.
are people basically putting together visual shopping lists and secretly, for themselves and to
Right.
share with others. But as far as Pinterest is concerned, they're basically putting together shopping lists that they can go to their advertisers and saying, look, this is the most hyper focused user interest list you will ever find on the planet.
Yep.
And, I have to say, I don't know for sure. Do you think they started out that way? Do you think they had that vision from day
No.
one?
No. No.
It just started out as a collab board, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's no different than how Instagram started up, right?
Right, right,
The founder wanted some place to put his creative photos, and that he could basically, he was a photographer and he wanted to be able to put filters easily on photos from his iPhone,
right.
right?
Yep.
That's it. That's all it started as. And then all of a sudden this user base adopts it, and then you see the dollar signs. You see the
It's
really big dollar signs. And that's how you become, in this day and age, you get lucky and you become this massive, massive company. But if you told me 6 years ago that Pinterest would be pulling in advertising rates like this, I'd call you crazy.
I
I
would call you.
absolutely would.
I would too. I've never thought of it. And, I mean, honestly, if it weren't for the suggestion that our fantastic text trade group, that someone suggested in the trade group, I would have never thought of it. I wouldn't have given it. Pinterest
Yep.
earnings coming up. I don't care. I don't know anything about Pinterest.
Yep. And I
And
wasn't in it simply because I didn't see that suggestion, and it never crossed my mind. Not once.
you weren't in it. Oh, shoot. I
No,
thought you
no,
were.
unfortunately.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Well, it's all
That's all
good.
right.
It's all right. You and
I
other
had my other
earnings.
plays today. Yeah.
Well,
So
speaking of, let's tell us about your plays. Remind our
so
viewers what your setup was, what your thesis was, and then let us know what happened.
so the first thing is SPH, Suburban Propane. So I had a big play today on their earnings, which didn't turn out as planned. I was expecting them to have a pretty massive beat due to the fact this whole idea came up. because I visited Philly, and now that I think about the date, it totally makes sense. But it was in January, and everywhere we went, we just walked around the city, saw a couple museums, but we went to get a few drinks and some food after. And every single place we went had to be outdoors, right? But each one of those outdoor locations had absolute minimum 7 to 10 outdoor propane heaters, right? And when you have those big umbrella style heaters or the ones that go over an entire bench, right? You're utilizing, if that's running throughout all your operation hours, which they are, because otherwise they don't have any customers, you're running through at least 1 gallon or 1 tank of propane a day for each one of those.
Wow.
So it got me interested. I'm like, wow, this is crazy utilization. It's probably much higher than it ever has been, right? Because we don't normally have these situations with heating and everything. So I went on to Twitter analytics. I used Google Analytics, and sure enough, searches for propane were the highest they have ever been in the past 6 years, I want to say.
Wow.
Right. So this got me really excited. Now, what's the most Googled propane user? SPH. And
Hmm.
SPH is Suburban Propane Partners
You've seen
LP.
you've seen the logo.
I
That's for
guarantee you've
sure.
seen the logo.
It's them and AmeriGas. If you've ever seen a
Yep.
propane tank, it's one of those two logos on it.
Right. Right. So I opened 10 options calls on SPH and took some stock as well on Monday for today's earnings report coming out. Now, unfortunately, today's earnings report came out, but this was for quarter four. And quarter four was actually lower than everyone expected due to the fact that November and December were unusually warm. Now,
Hmm.
what you would expect from that, with everybody getting hyped about it, because I'm not the only one with this idea, is that the stock would have tanked after. However, what they mentioned, and they mentioned it real quick on the call, you could tell because they were trying to save a sell off, is that they've seen January, February so far hit all time highs for propane usage due to this cold front we've had recently, right?
Hmm.
So I had to close my options due to the fact that they were March and they wouldn't, if I had longer expiration options, I would have held them for the next announcement. However, I did keep all of the shares that I bought as well, expecting next quarter Q1 announcements, which will happen in Q2, Q1 earnings. I expect them to have a sizable beat. So, not the best news, but not the worst news.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. For our viewers who um, understand and agree with this thesis, Paulie, I think you've dug up some
We lost you, Eric.
classic. Uh,
Still. All right, users, just to fill in, or viewers, just to fill in the gap here. I wanted to just, even though it didn't work out, I want to just emphasize here what it takes to do your homework here. It's not hard to create a thesis and really act on it. It's just a matter of everyday life. What do you see getting used? What do you use personally? Do you see trends? And then if you do see something that you think has some backing behind it, go ahead, do the research, look into Google Trends, look into social media. Are people complaining about a shortage of whatever you're looking into? If that's the case, you can build a high probability, a high conviction trade out of it, right? So, looks like we dropped Eric, but I'm going to keep going. So, Another earnings report we had today was on CTHR, which I was very excited about, right? Now, CTHR is Charles and Colvard. What this is essentially is green masonite, I believe that's saying it right, masonite rings, which are lab grown, essentially diamonds that are better for the environment. They're not blood diamonds and basically much, much cheaper than a standard engagement ring, right? And people our age, millennials, are looking towards getting rings that they would feel better about having and holding on their finger for the rest of their life, right? You have to look at this thing on your hand, and if you feel bad every time because you think, oh my God, this could potentially be a blood diamond, that's a pretty heavy setback from you buying a diamond in general. So we got the earnings report today from CTHR, and they beat expectations by over 200%. Earnings per share was over 200% beat, which is huge. And this shows the trend of where we are going, right? Where our generation is putting their money. It's putting it into green, friendly products that essentially are good for the world as a whole, rather than just this arbitrary valuable thing that they want to buy and go off of. So, um, if you're interested, which I think this is a long-term play. I'm going to be holding the shares that I have. I'm happy that we had this heavy of a beat. I believe we're up almost 30% after hours, which is pretty freaking great. But I'm going to be holding these shares probably for the next 2 to 3 years. And I think I'm only seeing upsides from here. With Valentine's Day around the corner, I think we're going to see a lot of buying from our generation, and then just continued on. When we get out of this pandemic, I think there's going to be a lot of proposals that utilize these environmentally friendly, ethical diamond sources moving forwards. So Eric can't get back in. We're going to end this live stream and join another one so we could rejoin with my co-host here. So until 5 minutes, peace out.